Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. We are on segment 2, our media segment now. And we did have movie night in the middle of the day yesterday.
We did. I mean, they don't often happen at night anymore.
Honestly, because, for me at least, it happens usually midday because that would be like evening your time.
And I've been trying to get my sleep schedule back to normal, so I haven't been up that late.
Yeah. So movie afternoon, movie lunch break in my case.
Yeah.
But yes, so we watched a movie that I had been kind of wanting to show people for a long time. It's a bit older. When I did look this up, it came out in 2003, although I first saw it in college, which would have been like 2008, 2009.
It did give original Transformers movie vibes.
It had a very 80s, 1990s anime kind of feel to it. Even though it was made in the early 2000s. But the movie's called Interstellar 5555, which I later found out that those subtitles actually mean something. Like the fives actually stand for something. They actually use the 5 as S's. So it's like oh god, I've forgotten it now.
Oh. So I look it up while you waffle.
Yeah, please look it up while I just go. I'll describe the plot. So the interesting thing about this movie is that there's absolutely no spoken dialogue, but it's not like a silent movie or like that. It's essentially they took Daft Punk, the kind of, I don't know what to call that band or group, whatever they are.
Story of Secret Star System.
Story of Secret Star System. That's what it is. So there's Daft Punk, the group. Their second album, Discovery. The entire movie is set to that album, and the album just plays through. And they have essentially made an anime movie. Some Japanese animation studio, Toei, I think, did the movie, and they just basically created this whole like sci-fi. It's a very simplistic story because, when I say simplistic, I mean at the very beginning you can kind of guess how most of the plot points are going to happen. Some bit of adversity is going to happen to the main people. They're going to go through a series of hardships, and then they're going to break free or be rescued, and then happily ever after, right?
Actually, there were a couple of twists that I didn't see coming.
Oh, okay. I'm curious to hear about that when we get into that. But the basic premise of the plot is you've got a group of blue people on an alien planet playing music, right? They're playing in a band as the first song plays. Another ship lands, and these people get out, gas the crowd, and kidnap the band. And crowd wakes up and
sleep gas, that is.
Yeah, sleep gas. I realized I should emphasize they did wake back up. They get the band gets kidnapped and taken back to Earth, where they are disguised to look like a normal human rock band from the 80s, or 90s, I guess maybe. And they get the guy who kidnapped them, who it's kind of a somewhat mystery who he is, but he has a spaceship. They get him to international fame and acclaim, and they win an award. But then one guy who was from their home area of space followed the guy through his little escapade back to Earth, crash lands, and spends his time eventually breaking some of them free. At which point, they rescue the one person that isn't free yet, and then confront the guy who kidnapped them, and eventually, at the end, defeat him and make their way back home. I'm not spoiling too much because I do recommend this movie. It's quite good, especially because it manages to tell a lot of story and get a lot of nuance across to the audience without any sort of dialogue and without much in the way of sound effects.
I think, and don't take this as a bad way thing, but it's the perfect film to show a class of art students.
I agree with that.
It's all about lateral thinking the way
Lateral
the
thinking,
word,
yeah, that's the word you're looking
yeah.
for.
The okay, right. I could poke holes in it all day, but I appreciate that you kind of got to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
There's, first of all, I thought it was going to be a lot shorter. I thought the moment they all got out of their headbox things, where they're
The mind control bit.
mind controlled, that's the word. I thought that was going to be like they were then going to just beat up the bad guy and go home. But no, it was like that was only the first third of the story kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a lot more to the struggle behind that.
Yeah, and something else that I said when we just finished the movie, I was like, so it was a good movie, but the music kind of let it down.
Yeah, so
which is a bit gone.
Yeah, I mentioned this at the end of the movie too. I'm not a huge fan of Daft Punk. Like, they have a few songs that I absolutely love, but this was like an entire album. And if you're not a huge fan of that genre of music, there are scenes and bits that can get a bit grating. But I will say the story and animation carried it for me during those scenes.
Yeah, that's what you kind of would go there for, and like just the concept of a film with no words. I mean, I know it's been done before, especially with like really old movies, I think. But yeah, it's interesting, and clearly the story and animation holds its own, because if it didn't, the whole thing would just be a mess.
Yeah, and they. So the idea of, and this is an idea that I pretty positive has been explored in the past. The idea of setting like some sort of visual media alongside an album of a band or a group, like that, I think is something that, it's just a really cool concept to me. I said this yesterday, I can only think of one, maybe two other instances where they've done something similar to this. The band Coheed and Cambria had like a comic series that went alongside one of their albums, I believe.
Right. But yes, like I said, there was a lot of how can I put this? Things that happened which don't really make any sense why they happened.
Yeah.
Like all of the cultists being like, last one in the lava's a stinky poop, and they all just dived off a cliff into lava. I didn't really understand that, but I understood that it was to progress the plot.
And it does have a very uplifting ending of like everyone getting along and working together and everything like that.
Didn't see the space boy dying. That was one of the twists where I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's nice that it's not going to be a sickly sweet ending, as it were.
Well, it is kind of, it's got a few bittersweet notes at the end there, because like what was it, him and his dream girl, right? They finally connect just in time for him to die.
She was my least favorite character, I'm just saying, because she was basically just there to look good.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought that her character conveyed a lot of you're right, she didn't do much in the movie.
She was a damsel in distress for most of it.
Yeah, for a good chunk of the movie. She did, and one thing I noticed, and you could tell, maybe it was a product of its time, and you could tell it was directed and made in Japan, but the when they're burying the one guy, Hero Man, he everyone's working to like actually shovel dirt in, except
she's
for
not.
her.
I noticed that.
she just sits there looking sad.
I literally, when we were watching that, I was like, okay, if I was in the situation, yes, I would say, I'll do the digging, it's fine. But at the same time, I'm like, well, is that kind of, in this day and age, is that toxic masculinity being like, oh, the woman doesn't have to dig? Ugh, fuck my life.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I was kind of on both sides of that. I was like, on the one hand, I was like, yeah, I would probably do the digging and not ask anyone else to, but at the same time, pick up a bloody shovel.
Well,
he just saved your ass.
So I got to be careful about how I phrase this. I obviously, that's something that, if you think about it from a storytelling perspective, let me arrange my thoughts. If you think about it from a storytelling perspective, yeah, there might be something if it was made in modern day like Western anywhere, then that could be seen as somewhat chauvinistic. But if you're looking at it from like if you were looking at the story as if you're looking at real people, there's something kind of oddly charming about the fact that she that one main character, she was the main character, like I think of the movie. If I had to choose one person who was probably the main protagonist, I'd say it was her.
Yeah.
And I don't know, she's an extremely feminine character is the way I'd put it. Like,
Yeah.
and when I say feminine, I mean like the stereotypical feminine character, but she's not like a
Yeah.
weak character. Like, because she's the
No,
one who
mentally
manages.
she's strong.
Yeah, she's the one that manages to find out like where the guy is, like the guy that kidnapped them all, and get them to the place they need to be. Like, she was the only one that managed to like break through the mind control when she still had the things on her head.
Yeah, at the beginning, when the guy almost escapes, right, with his guitar, I was like, okay, he's set up to be the main protagonist. He's going to go off and save the other three.
Yeah.
Instead, they just got another person who looks just like him and just killed anything that he doesn't like. He doesn't do anything.
Yeah, the guitarist isn't really that much of a main character in the movie. Like,
No, like the keyboard dude does quite a bit.
The keyboard dude's actually kind of a badass. He's the one that infiltrates
Yeah.
the place. He knocks out the floor washer dude, and like I don't
Yeah.
know. The keyboardist is kind of a badass.
He was my favorite character, I should say. The drummer dude just also kind of didn't really do much, but you got the feeling that he was kind of just there as a joke.
Yeah, he was kind of a comic relief goofball kind of guy. Also, one of the things I really liked is that when they did it went up on the screen very quickly, but their fake identities, like when they were doing like profiles on them, when they were showing how they were getting popular on Earth, they had their fake like origin, their fake like likes and dislikes. The drummer dude, origin, Munich, favorite things, beer. Like, it just made me laugh when I saw that, and I want to go back and pause it and actually look at like the full profiles they made for all of them.
Yeah, get the full lore.
The keyboardist was supposedly from Brooklyn. The guitarist, who was the most useless, he was supposedly from London.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what they listed him as on that little brief snippet there.
Huh. The attire wasn't very.
It was very like 80s rock band attire.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like synth, what is it? Like prog rock.
Yeah. I
don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I think
but-
they just should have evened out the roles a bit more.
Yeah. They could have been, but again, this is one of the reasons that I say that it tells a very simple story, because it can't get into the deep nuances you could get into when you have more time to develop and more dialogue. This one, it's an entirely visual story, and the music is there to set the mood and the theme of the scene.
It felt like corners were cut because they didn't have enough music to go with it.
Well, right, that's the thing. It has to take place entirely within the span of one album.
Yeah, and there was a lot of repeating lines of music. My gosh.
I'll repeat the joke. There's a song called Too Long, and the theme of the scene, it's like it's too long since you've been home, right? Like, that's supposed to be kind of the feel you get out of it, but the scene goes on forever, and the song goes on forever, and so
just repeating the words too long.
Yeah, the joke is the scene is too long, the song is too long. Can we get to the chase?
Yeah.
But
Sad but true.
we could pick the movie apart and we have spent the last.
I'm not even mentioning like the ghost spirit that followed them through the warp.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's the fact that like their understanding of like physics, or if I wanted to be a real cynic, the fact that the whole world united together to develop like a brand new space program so they could send these weirdo aliens home instead of dissecting them. Like,
every single thing about the villain was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was, but that's the thing. He was an over the top like pantomime villain.
Yeah, with no reason for doing what he was doing. But that's why I haven't brought him up until now.
Well, I think that it was implied that doing that ritual was going to give him the power to essentially dominate the world. Like, it was a very generic supervillain motivation.
They tried to cram in some kind of, he watched his father die as a child, and then he just became an asshole.
Well, it was implied. What I got out of that scene was that like that meteor crashed and it made him immortal, right? It was that evil radiation sort of thing that made him into some kind of a weirdo immortal thing, and there was space technology in that thing, and that's where he got all of his shit from.
Yeah.
There are contrivances in the movie, but if you don't look at any piece of it too closely and you just sit back and just enjoy it, it's a very simple, straightforward, classical feeling kind of story that has a very uplifting ending. It'll give you some. If you don't dig too deep, it'll give you some good feelings by the end of the movie.
Well, I think you could kind of write a paper on it that lasts about twice the length of the actual film, with all the things that they did with it, and very clever things that they did do.
Yeah. There's they do a lot with just with facial expressions and with visual cues that would normally be handled by dialogue, and I think because you're not listening to dialogue, you're that much more
focusing that much more.
Yeah, on the visual aspects.
I thought it was quite a. Despite the silliness of it all, it did lend quite an emotional response, I think.
Yeah, and again, if you're looking for something more serious and sci-fi, this isn't for you. If you're looking for something with deep character development that subverts your expectations, this isn't what you're looking for.
Then watch Star Trek.
Yeah, right? Well, specifically, watch The Next Generation.
Okay. Anyway.
That's an excellent series. I have not talked enough about that. I was not a Star Trek fan. Really, I never watched Star Trek. But after seeing the new rebooted Star Trek movie, the first one, I was like, you know what? Maybe the original series are actually pretty good. And I went back and I watched Next Generation, which aired during my lifetime, but I was 5.
Yeah, I'm not really a Star Trek fan. I think I tried watching it once and it was just a bit too I don't know, dated, I guess, when I was about.
Yeah, well, it depends on which if you go back to the original one, that's what I tried to watch the original one first with Kirk and Spock and all that, and I couldn't do it. But the one with Jean-Luc Picard, the Patrick Stewart, that series was quite good.
Okay.
With a lot of good philosophy and character moments and stuff. It was just very, very well done. Final thoughts on this movie. I think I've pretty much given mine at this point.
I enjoyed it. I don't think it's not. It's artsy, right? And I appreciate the artsiness. It's not the kind of film I would repeatedly watch, but it's interesting in the way that they do things.
Yeah.
That's my final review.
I mean, yeah, and it isn't something that I go back to often. I think I've watched that movie maybe 4 times the whole way through. Once in college, once a few years after that, once a few years after that, and once yesterday. It's not a movie that I go back to often, but it's a movie that I'll watch maybe every few years.
It'd be great for a family setting.
Yes, it's a good, wholesome, feel good kind of movie.
Yeah.
It reminds me of old school cartoons when I was younger, the cartoon, the kind of the Transformers movie, which I've talked up extensively, not on the podcast, but in just personal conversations. I loved that movie, but it has a very similar feel to that, where it's not overly complex, but it's complex enough to really appeal to the whole family, right?
Yeah, it's good. words. Yes, I can't say the words. It's good too many times in a row.
Yes, good. Big words,
It's
no.
just distinctively good.
Movie good.
Moving on.
All right, go on. You were starting to move into something else that you'd been watching this week.
Yes, well, not this week. This morning, because I was like, I feel like I need something new to binge. So I went to Netflix. That's
that
right,
hive
it's a
of
pro
scum
Netflix
and
day
villainy.
today. Yes, a terrible people go, which is why I love it. No, I've been watching Cobra Kai.
Oh, yeah, I've heard such good things about this.
So, if anyone out there has seen Karate Kid, which anyone my age or older should have done, Alicia had not, and I was very disappointed in her.
To be fair, I didn't see that movie for most of my life, and I think
Really?
I have seen it since, but it took me a long... It was a classic movie. It was one of those classic movies I never saw when I should have, and got back to it later.
Gosh, Cobra Kai is like a TV series which followed on from a film called The Karate Kid. Karate Kid's a very old film where there was like this guy who got bullied, picked on, and the bullies were kind of in this rival gang, not gang, dojo. They went a karate dojo called Cobra Kai. And so the film's all about this scrawny kid with the help of Mr. Miyagi, his teacher, training him up to beat Cobra Kai in this final world championship. It's a really good film, very much, very highly rated. I think there was a second film, but I think it's one that no one really talks about because it's one of those bad sequels.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
But this TV series on Netflix, it takes the characters from the end of the first film, and it says, right, 20 years later, here's the main asshole from the first one. He's a bum. He's not doing well in life, and he sees a kid getting picked on, and it's kind of a reversal of roles, right? David San, whatever is the protagonist from the first film, is now a big time like car dealer. He's got lots of money. He's got an amazing house, a family, all these things, and he becomes a bit of a prick, but not a massive prick. Like I still think he's a good
smug,
person.
Right? Like, would that be a fair characterization? He's gotten smug because of his success.
Yeah, but it's obvious that he actually does care. Like when there's a lot about his like family. He's got a daughter and a son, and he cares a lot about his daughter. He wants them to grow up properly, not to be like on games and stuff the whole time. And yeah, so this the Cobra Kai dude, he helps this kid that's being beaten up by a bunch of other school kids, and he sets up a Cobra Kai dojo. And he, in the true Cobra Kai fashion, it's like no nonsense, right? It's that's why he's very how can I say it? Of his time, his morals and ethics are that of someone who's like lived through the 80s kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where like the first time that his student is like in the dojo with him, he's like, alright, give me 30 press-ups on your knuckles, and the kid gets down and he's like, can't do one. He starts having like an asthma problem, and the sensei is like, what are you doing? And picks up his asthma inhaler, throws it against the wall, it smashes apart. And the kid's like, oh, okay, I guess that's not a thing. We can't just like, we just gotta buckle down no matter what. And don't do this in real life because that can be quite dangerous.
Well, yeah, no, you'll get sued also.
Oh yeah, the things that he at one point he ties the kid's hands up, takes him to a swimming pool in the middle of the night and pushes the kid in. He's like, use your feet, keep your head above the water, just fucking, you're a Cobra Kai, you can't die.
Just do it.
Yeah, and I'm like, this kid's gonna go fucking run to the police any second, but he doesn't for whatever reason. Anyway, several times there's things that happen, and the leader of the Cobra Kai, the sensei, is like, "What's this?" And there's going to be profuse language, forewarning. So if you're, affected by language, then
Yeah, if you have sensitive
pause.
virgin eardrums, then close them.
he's he's like, "Stop being a pussy!" Like, people online telling you that you're a piece of shit. In my day, you went up to someone and called them a piece of shit to their face. And there's a respect to being an asshole back in my day, and it's like very.
It's rough.
He's a total dickhead, right?
Yeah, it's rough. Absolutely. And it's callous, but
But that's kind of how you forge the best steel, is in flame.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he doesn't take shit from nobody. Yeah, and so he gets another person. Like, the first episode, pretty slow. It kind of warms you into it. I can't remember if it's the second episode or third episode. Second episode, it definitely picks up and it gets a lot better. Kind of gets you pumped. Like, that's why I went out for a run before we did the podcast today, because I was like feeling pumped after a couple of episodes of this. And yeah, it does refer back to Karate Kid in some very funny times. Like, the classic wax on, wax off thing, right?
This is in the preview for the series, which I've watched, and I found this hilarious.
The wax... Wait, have you heard about what I'm about to say?
Yes, I have, but the audience hasn't. Go on.
Okay. So the classic thing is, like, when David San in the first Karate Kid is, like, washing a window, and they call back to it. They're like, the guy's washing one of the windows in the Cobra Kai studio because it's kind of run down. He's like, "Am I doing this right, Sensei?" And the Sensei Tendra are like, "I don't give a shit. Just wash the window."
Yeah, because in the original, it was a technique to it: wax on, wax off.
It was training him through the
through just like disciplined chores or something like that.
Through the chores, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This guy,
just I don't give a shit.
The window, just fucking clean it. Yeah. So yes, it has some really funny moments. It has some quite intense moments.
Going back to something that we talked about, I think it was last podcast. We kind of ventured into Easter egg territory after we talked about product placement, and I'm thinking that this is an example of how to do like reference right. Like, you're referencing the source material, you're referring back to it, but you're doing it in kind of like a logical, it's not like, that happens and then they all turn to the camera and like, "Laugh, you sheep."
Yeah.
It's more like it's more subtle. Like, the audience will get it if they've seen the original, but it's not like in your face so much, and it's funny.
There are a lot of subtleties. One of probably the best subtlety I find is that clearly the show revolves around these two people, the bum and the rich guy, right?
Yeah.
Neither of them are good people. Neither of them are bad people. Like,
they're very human.
This sensei's trying to train up a guy through, not the most PC means, but he's training a guy up so he doesn't get beaten up, basically.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that sensei then gets drunk one night, swaps a couple of cans of beer for a spray paint can, and draws a giant cock on the rich guy's billboard going into his mouth. So he's not good at all. He's not a good person. Some of his morals are good, though, and it is very funny.
I mean,
I think I've sold Kaiser on it.
I've wanted to watch this for a while, but now hearing more details, I think I'm going to have to. It's so something I was thinking about listening to your whole description of it. Talking about how this guy has a very, very harsh philosophy to train up the kid, but the kid doesn't run and actually sticks it out and keeps going with him. This is my thinking, is that I think the movies both were products of their, like the movie and then this series, both philosophies had a point at their time. So when the original one came out, it was what, the late '80s, early '90s, right? I
Right.
can't remember when it first came out, but it was a time of more like noise and conflict and like aggression, right?
Yeah.
And so the Mr. Miyagi philosophy of just like this calm and reserved nature, the non-aggression and discipline and defense, it struck a much like a strong chord, and it was a much needed message, I think.
Mm.
Now
Now it's more like the opposite.
exactly, we're in an opposite, where people are seem to be a lot more passive, they're a lot more sensitive, they're a lot more you know hurt by everything, really.
Yeah,
It's the
and that
exact
doesn't
opposite.
mean people need to be aggressive.
No,
It
no.
means that people need to. When you see something going wrong in the world, you don't just sit on the sidelines and do nothing
Yeah,
about it.
you speak up and you say something about it. Aggression doesn't necessarily. Aggression is probably the wrong word. Maybe disagreeableness or whatever the word is.
Oh, Cobra Kai is all about aggression. Like,
Yes, yes. Okay, I'm talking from a philosophical standpoint. But
yes,
my
but,
point is, I
yeah,
think that the whole Cobra Kai thing, the message that it's giving, like now, like it's almost. You're right. Everything you described is very non-PC. Probably would get him sued if not arrested.
oh yeah, he would. Yeah, absolutely arrested.
But for that reason, I think that's why it's very cathartic to watch somebody like grow more disciplined through those harsher like methods, because now
Mm.
everything is coated in like 5 layers of like softness. It's like
Yeah, they really. Sorry.
no. Just I was saying, like in modern day, if you want to actually, I'm thinking about at work when I have to like tell somebody to like what they need to do, or if they've made a mistake on something. I have to be very careful about how I say it. I have to go through like 5 layers of
Yeah.
corporate speak before I can actually get to
There's
my point.
there's a scene that I think you would fucking love because it's just very funny.
Yeah.
And okay, actually, I feel like I mean no offense to people when I say this. This is one of the scenes. It's set inside the school, and there's a teacher who's like, there's one of the children here who, and I won't name names, but they have their mother called me the other day because her son was crying because of his facial deformity was being picked on. Which, by the way, that shit does happen in school,
Well, yeah.
where the teachers literally basically tell you without telling you,
Yeah.
and that shit is horrible.
That is. It's
But
awful.
she goes on and she's like, "All right, so it's Halloween this week, the Halloween party, and we thought we should have this small discussion about maybe we shouldn't go. People shouldn't go for like the stereotypical slutty nurse costume anymore this year. I mean, it's not very nice. Maybe
Oh my God.
instead they should go as like a non-binary hospital worker." And I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Oh shit.
Like the show was very clearly making a joke out of it.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It's like one of these things that you just can't say these days, but Netflix can say it somehow.
Well, it's because
Uh,
Netflix doesn't have like advertisers. Like the audience are the people paying for it. Like
Yeah.
so like Netflix can
It's
get
a
away with.
shocking thing, like that other studios wouldn't be able to get away with, but they do. And I think it's good.
But it is hilarious though. Yeah, but that was kind of my point, is that it seems like this show is a very intelligent and very comedic commentary on the times, and the same was true
Yeah.
for the original. So I think in that regard, from what you're describing to me at least, and from what I've seen on the preview of it, it seems to be a show that carries forward that same sort of. It has the same spirit of the original one.
Mm.
That's me talking, having not seen it. I'll try to actually watch a little bit of it this week, because I finished playing Cyberpunk. I beat it, so
Yeah.
I've got quite a bit of time left to go around and maybe watch something
Yeah.
else in my free time.
I mean, I started it this morning and I'm already on, I think, episode 5 now.
Well, that speaks well to a series then, if you can plow through it.
Yeah. Also, I'm a binger.
Yeah, binge watching is, I mean, I do the exact same thing when I find like what was it, the series Vikings. I watched like the first 4 seasons of that in like a few weeks, and I honestly got kind of sick, like burnt out on it, which is why I haven't talked about it recently.
Yeah, for those weeks, you did talk about it every single week on the podcast.
I did. Well, now I'm back to watching it again. So, actually, hold up. There is something I wanted to talk about Vikings.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry.
Right, is it short? Because we haven't got much time.
Okay, fine. We're going to go over a little bit. But
Okay.
Vikings, right? So, something that I kind of got this impression, and it's almost getting worse in the later seasons. They really... I don't know why they do this, if they feel it's necessary for character development or to not piss off like people with, politically correct intentions, but all of the women come across as psychopaths. Like,
yeah, I kind of understand the reason behind that.
Like, I'm just thinking like there's these two people, like one of them is like perfectly like he pulls off some sketchy political dealings to dethrone one of the female earls, right?
Right.
And in her, like, in his defense, she'd been gone for like a year, and all the people were getting restless, and he basically just took over in her absence. And they end up like kind of coming to a mutual understanding. They decide to do a cooperative rule, and she threatens him a lot at first, but that's it. And then it goes on for like an entire season with them like slowly growing closer and closer, and then they're going to get married. And then on their wedding day, like she's still acting all happy, getting in her dress and everything. And when he comes to see her just before the wedding, she stabs the shit out of him.
Jesus.
And kills him, and then takes over again. And I'm like,
okay.
I understand like the whole, like they were trying to make her seem like a more shrewd political operative. But everything leading up to that point, like that's the kind of thing a sociopath would do. Like being all happy-go-lucky, showing no signs throughout that entire like season-long thing that she was in any way like harboring a motive for like vengeance. And then out of nowhere, with a smile on her face, and she's in the wedding dress and ready to go, and she shanks the fuck out of him. Like that's only the most recent example in the series, but there's quite a few that are like situations like that where I think they're trying to... It seems like a lazy writer trying to make the female characters seem strong, and they...
Well, exactly. Also, when I said I can kind of understand why the women are psychopaths in it, that was not a suggestion that women are psychopaths. That was the something that's very popular in media these days. It's to make women more the dominant figure, show that they have bigger balls than the men quite a lot in a lot of shows and TV programs.
Yeah, this calls back to a much earlier podcast where we talked about like modern tropes and how I'm just kind of getting burnt out on them. Like if I grew up in the 80s, I probably would have gotten sick of the the action hero trope, like the muscle-bound guy like mowing down legions of people. By like the 10th movie, I probably would have been burnt out on it. But now that you're right, that's the modern trope for a lot of like female action stars, is rather than giving them depth and complexity and trying to make them seem like interesting characters and strong in their own right, they basically just make them like smoke and drink and kill a bunch of people. Like it's like it's lazy writers' shorthand for this is a strong character.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, obviously one of the greatest female roles I think has been Ripley from Alien vs. Predator. Which, oh my god, you haven't seen that film, have you?
I haven't seen the film, but I do know who you're talking about, and I've seen plenty of people talking about the original movies.
Yeah, especially the first and the second one are both like must watches. Maybe that'll be one of the movie nights. But she doesn't. She's not going around with like an Arnold Schwarzenegger minigun cutting down aliens everywhere she goes. No, it's all about the survival, making the right choices, and putting up with a great deal of pain just so that herself or other people can survive.
Yeah, they make her an actual strong character rather than just making her like show off superficial strengths.
Yeah. And she has her weaknesses.
Yeah.
Some that she gets over, some that she doesn't. But yeah, she's a great role model, I think.
Yeah.
Even a fictitious one.
Yeah, so and it's just one of those things that it annoys me because so much else in the show is well written. Because there's characters that do very similar things to what she does, but the show tries to put her in a very sympathetic light and portray her as this very shrewd, intelligent political operative. Yes, I know we're going over time. That beep came through.
Sorry. I was trying to do it subtly because this is like the longest we've done.
Well, I've completely forgotten to put myself on Do Not Disturb, so the Discord beep did come through. All right, I will summarize my thoughts with this one last little point.
Okay.
So I've already described how this character acts, right? And
Yep.
the show tries to put her in a light of how she's a very intelligent, shrewd political operative, right? Mm-hmm. There's another character in the game who does almost exactly the same thing, right? And they portray him as a bumbling buffoon who is like making a hash of his political dealings, but he does exactly the same things. And then there's a third character who is, well, actually two other characters. I'll use a male and female example. One is the main guy, Ragnar Lothbrok. Like, they take the time, like, he kills people too, but they take the time to develop him as a very shrewd and, like, interesting character. There's times where he has the opportunity to slaughter his enemies, and he specifically fights not to because he's got a plan in the works. And it might not be good for the person he spared, but he's clearly, thinking several steps ahead. And you can see when he's on his way to do something as a character. The other one is a French princess who shows up, I think, in the third or fourth season. She, like, at first seems like a bit of a... Like, she's clearly the voice behind her father, the king. Like, she's the one kind of influencing him, and they do a good job of portraying her as a very shrewd political operative. She's very, like, interesting and manipulative, and she ends up getting into, like, a forced arranged marriage, and at first she's, like, throwing a tantrum, doesn't really like it, is, like, really against it, but she eventually figures out how she can use it for her own political machinations and gain power from it. So I know that the people who are writing the show can do good character development and can, like, portray people in an intelligent way, both male and female. But for whatever reason, there's, like, a handful of main, like, female protagonists in the show that they just make a ham-fisted just hash of it. All right. That's my final thoughts. I won't go any further. We are at, like, 40 minutes into the recording. So I'll end segment 2 there. Unless you have anything left to say.
Nope, nothing left to say.
Okay. This is the end of segment 2 of the TMCJ podcast. You will hear us again momentarily for segment 3, where a long-awaited promise will finally be fulfilled. Blue has read a certain dinosaur aficionado book. So, look forward to that. In the meantime, thank you for listening.